What's up, guys? I'm EJ. I'm joined by Kendall. Thank you all for checking out this edition of our Young Justice Phantoms review. We're talking about season 4, episode 4, Involuntary. Kendall, episode starts on March 25th. We're getting closer and closer to the wedding date for Magan and Connor. But as we see as the episode moves forward, we kind of have a tragic ending. Um, Definitely move the story ahead, and there are indications that this kind of may be where we leave this story moving forward. So it was a big episode, a lot of implications moving forward. What were your initial thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of stuff that we talked about in the last review that we did on the first three episodes, which you can check out, is brought up and relevant to this episode. A lot of things that we maybe predicted or story points that we pointed out could potentially be coming into play and coming into a head. They did come to a head in this episode, and
All right.
um that's great. I mean, we talked about last week that this Martian arc has been great, but that I you know I couldn't see them going 10 episodes in this route, or 6 7 episodes, and maybe they still will. I mean, we don't know, but I tend to agree that I think that we may be reaching a close. This seems like being as we're guys who have watched Young Justice for years now. This seems like the kind of episode where they institute a time skip. Like maybe maybe they'll pick up right where we left off, but I also
Mm-hmm.
feel uh we could be getting a time skip coming up where they're just on Earth and they're still kind of dealing with whatever they're dealing with. Um, but I don't know. We'll have to find out next week. But yeah, terrific episode. Excited to dive into it in detail.
So this episode, we talked about last week the kind of ongoing themes and kind of mysteries we were trying to solve. So one being, who has been the people attacking Magan and Connor throughout this time. We kind of get a lot more of a look at who this person is in this episode. And of course the thing of who is trying to who killed the king, and whether there was a connection between the people trying to attack Connor Magan and Gar and the people who killed the king. We learned that that was not the case, and kind of finally the resolution of, like, once we see Ma'afalak with that bomb, would they be able to stop him, or how would this kind of play out? Because as we know, as I talked about last week, in the comics, a lot of the canon, it is the White Martians that end up kind of enslaving everyone else on Mars. I was wondering, would this be the beginning of that, or would we see, which is what I anticipated, maybe a swerve similar to what we saw with Tara in the last episode. So I think the biggest thing, I think, and I know sometimes we go linear, sometimes we go in order or out of order. I think this is kind of the episode where you kind of have to almost kind of go start from the end and kind of go backwards. So we get to the point where they've solved the mystery of the murder, and they're at this birthday celebration for Jem, the prince there. And after he makes his rousing speech of trying to unite the Ashen, the Garoon, and all of the Martians on Mars, they finally seem to, or at least the group is able to figure out that there's a some kind of attack that's being plotted, and that sends Connor and McGann and Gar underground to find this bomb that they are able to quickly discover was set by Macam, or Ma'afalak as he likes to be called. And in Connor's brave attempt to stop this bomb from going off with this virus that he understands would kill a lot of the Martians that are on Mars, he appears to die, disappear. We don't know exactly what happened with him. I guess we should start off right there. What do you think is going on with Connor? How do you think that thing played out? Um, I have my theories, but I want to know what you think.
Um, it's left so open ended. Um, I mean, just practically speaking, uh, I don't think that that's how they would kill Superboy.
Mm-hmm.
Or rather, I don't think that they will kill Superboy. But um, but if they were going to, I think that actually is a decent way of doing it. in terms of it having meaning, it having stakes, it having consequence.
Hmm.
Um, it's honestly kind of similar to Wally, in the
Right.
situation we had with him at the end of season two. So you know, I guess just the difference is that the Wally situation was at the end of the season, and
Right.
it was, when we didn't know if we were getting any more Young Justice as opposed to this being at the beginning of season four. That suggests that there's still a story to tell here, and that they're not going to. And we know there's still probably a story to tell with Wally, and that we may end up seeing him again at some point. But particularly with Superboy, that I don't know if they would do that in episode four and then him just not show up again. That seems bizarre. Um, but in terms of the scene, in terms of the action, I think that for an episode that started out fairly slow, very Scooby Doo-ish, and we talked about that last week, that the sort of mystery was sort of becoming a little bit of a Scooby Doo who done it. Who are the
Yeah.
characters? It's got to be somebody you've been introduced to. It's not going to be the red herring or the Bladen herring, whatever you want to call it. It's always good. It's going to be the character that you It's going to be a character that you least expect, and shockingly enough, it was somebody we didn't mention last week. So,
No. Yeah. It's the
um,
priestess. Yeah.
yeah, so that was interesting. Um, but but that was still, you're still watching it, at least from my perspective. I'm like, all right, this is interesting. At least we're done with this mystery. So, when are we gonna get back on Earth? And then it goes from a very monotone episode to it shoots up to 1,000 on the decibel meter when it comes to this when it comes to just the energy in this episode at that ceremony. And so,
Yeah.
yeah, I'll let
Yeah.
you go.
Yeah. I was gonna say the episode definitely revs up. You kind of have the midway kind of climax with the resolution of who killed the king, and it being
That's yeah.
Sarah, the priestess, which I thought was um, I like that. I like that the death ended up, because I think it sent a lot of messages. One, I think the fact that the death wasn't a kind of murder the way you would maybe think of a murder. Um, but two, I also kind of like the fact that it's this king that they presented as this great reformer and this great progressive, was also bigoted in many ways and had obviously major flaws. He didn't want his son to be marrying a groom. He was still stuck in his ways with the caste system, even though he was this quote unquote reformer and progressive. I think that sent a very interesting message there, and kind of how we see politicians from a distance could be very different from how they actually are when you see them, when you actually know their personalities and things like that. So I thought that was neat. I think when it came to, so you have that kind of mid climax, and then you think,
Yeah.
okay, well, clearly they laid the tea leaves that there are still mysteries to be had, because we don't, we see that priestess had nothing to do with attacking Magan and Connor, or the the Zeta tube. I kept calling it Boozum last week. The Zeta tube that it blew up when John was going through. We knew that there was no resolution to that. So I felt like, okay, something else has to happen, but you kind of didn't know what, and then very quickly we see the ending. So my theory in terms of what happened with SB, I think that he was saved by Saturn Girl and the Legion. I said last week that I felt like the Legion angle um, was leading to something involving Superboy, and I think that this kind of paints it picture very clear. So McGann, there's clearly some kind of friction with McGann and Saturn Girl's power. Saturn Girl, when the suspect that's putting, now we know, was the kryptonite on this bomb. She's saying I can't find the person because McGann is, her psychic energy is too strong and she's blocking everything. Like, I think that clearly there's some friction, and we've seen a couple times with their powers. So I think what happened was, I think they might not have stopped the suspect, but I think they were able to save Superboy. But because McGann is not blocked, is blocked from Saturn Girl, she don't know that they were able to get Superboy out of there in time before he would meet his demise. But I think that may end up leading to, like, the stories that we've seen, we honestly we saw play out. Spoilers alert for anybody who watches the Supergirl show, but we've seen play out in Supergirl and seen play out in a lot of canon where perhaps Superboy goes out and leads a whole different life, new life with the Legion, and maybe he comes back, but he comes back a different person. Maybe he comes back in love with someone from the Legion of Superheroes. I don't know, but that to me is what we're seeing happen. Is maybe Superboy, like I said last week, is their leader, and they have to save him here, otherwise they won't be a Legion of Superheroes, and and this will kind of lead to whenever they reunite between Magan and Connor, it's gonna be very awkward and perhaps very heartbreaking to kind of know that they were right on the doorstep of happiness and a forever life, and to see it kind of pulled away in a sense that in a way that they had no choice, because obviously we know the Legion of Heroes and all the work they do in the future to keep the universe safe. That's my theory. I don't know what you think, but that when I saw this whole play out, that was my thing. It was sad. It was sad. Like I don't. I hope Superboy's not dead. I don't think he's dead. But they did do a good job of kind of playing up the emotion. And boy, Greg Weisman, way to I talked about how much I love the roll credit scenes the last 3 weeks. Way to just punch me in the gut with this roll credit scene. Very powerful, but very sad to see.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's definitely a interesting theory. I may have to rewatch it just because I thought I was on the same path where I'm like, oh, so Legion's gonna step in, but they never show it, which
They
maybe
never
just
show it.
part
Yeah.
of the surprise.
Hmm.
But the way it was cut, it almost made it seem like we can't get there, in time.
Yeah.
Um, so I
Yeah.
mean, maybe again, maybe they say that, but yet they still get there,
Yeah.
and they save him. I guess they didn't say we can get there, but as
Yeah.
much as
They were having trouble
the
getting to the
mental,
suspect, because
right,
I think Saturn Girl says like I can't find this person's mental signature now because
right,
Magan is blocking all the psychic abilities right now.
right.
So I think that they probably would have been able. They probably their plan was to probably save Superboy and catch this person. Who I guess we should
Yeah,
talk about this person soon.
Killmonger.
Um,
Uh,
catch this person who laced this kryptonite, and all celebrate for a great time. But
so
they
that's what he did.
yeah,
I didn't.
because you see the bomb is there.
Yeah,
It's a regular bomb. We see Malafak put it there, and then when he shows up, the guy with the mohawk, he puts a device on top of the bomb, and it looks like benign. You'll know what it is. Like, I had to watch it a second time, um, but now I realize when Connor looks down and sees that there's this thing, he doesn't see, because I think it's encased in lead. That's my
right,
theory. Is that it was encased in lead, so he doesn't know what's in there. But the bigger thing is that there's a big bomb there. So this little thing that's on top of it, he's not paying attention to that. So
right.
so I think that they gave Ma'afa'ak the bomb, but whoever that person is, they knew Superboy was gonna be there to try to stop it and perhaps would succeed, and they then put the kryptonite there to ensure his demise. So do you have any theories there on one, who this person may even be, and two, what they're planning? I mean, they kind of the technology they're using almost looks similar to what the stuff we see from Vandal Savage in this show.
Well, he's definitely from the future. It definitely seems like it's a time deal. They said something about a time something in regards to that character. Definitely looks like a Legion villain. Um, Again, it gives me a Killmonger, a painkiller vibe from Black Lightning. But I don't know. In terms of who it is, I don't know. Maybe it's obvious to some people. If it's obvious, you can drop a comment.
For
But
sure.
I haven't personally picked up on it. Um, but I mean, again, sometimes Young Justice, like, with Malafak, he was in, we'd seen him prior, but we didn't know he was Malafak. We just knew him as McGann's brother, and then
Yeah.
they decided to make a twist and turn him into a different character. So, or even a character like Ty Longshadow, who we know is supposed to be like Apache Chief from Super Friends.
Right.
You don't really, maybe you don't pick up on it when you first see him, and then when you see his powers, and then it starts to make sense and starts to click where he fits. So maybe it's not clear now who he is. Maybe it is clear to some people, but Um, I'm sure we will get a better idea of who that is. But in terms of your theory, I think it makes I think it makes sense. It continues on the path of where what you were talking about last week. This only, I agree, only increases the odds that this is the path that we're going down. With him being a part of the Legion, and if that's the case, you set up an interesting scenario. I think the only question I would have is how long of a game are they going to play with that? Or is it going to be again, knowing Young Justice, they could skip ahead 3 months, 4 months, 6 months, and then that time is has elapsed. But he can't show up 2 weeks later and be like, yeah, I'm with the
Right.
Legion now.
Right.
Like that would have really is something. It's like the Wally West thing. We have to really let it sit for like now. If Wally West shows up, it's been 5 years or however long it's been.
Yeah.
Now that has some real impact. So that's going to be the thing with Superboy.
Yeah, you definitely have to, as the saying goes, kind of let the cookie bake in order to kind of see how that plays out. But
Yeah.
what's interesting, I want to talk about Mafia Ak in a second, but um, I don't know if you saw. It doesn't show up on my HBO Max, but for other people, it appears that the next arc is gonna feature a Artemis story involving Lady Shiva. It will involve also Vandal Savage's daughter, and it'll also involve who's the other person? Cassandra Cain, orphan. So to me, when it comes to like where we go from here, I mean there may be a time jump or maybe not be, but I don't know if we're really gonna get a resolution to this particular thing like next week. Like I don't think we will. I think that they're gonna leave what we saw there and then go to the next arc. And I think that this appears to be kind of what they're doing with this season, where each of the members of the so-called team are kind of having their own arc. The question, I guess, is, will all of them be 4 episodes each? In the intro, they feature Artemis, McGann, Connor, Rocket, Zatanna, and Nightwing. These,
I can't imagine they're going to do 4 episodes. There may be a combination.
right,
Be Nightwing and Aqualad or Aquaman have the same are part of the same story, or maybe it's mixed between them, like we saw with Magan and Connor. Um, but I see what you're saying.
yeah. I mean, I agree. Like that would I agree. They probably will mix some of them. I know again the next one in terms of just the art that they showed for
Right.
again on HBO Max, not on my HBO Max, but it showed only Artemis. And maybe the Zatanna angle will have Zatanna and Nightwing, or Zatanna and Rocket, or maybe it'll be Nightwing and Rocket. I don't know. Um,
Yeah.
but it appears there will be multiple arcs. My assumption would be they would do the first half of the season doing these arcs. So if you did four, so it's a 26 episode season. So you get to 13 episodes. I would say, okay, maybe you do, 3, 3, and 3 for the rest of them. Maybe the next one only 3 episode arcs. Particularly if they're
Right.
not maybe as impactful as like this one with someone maybe potentially dying.
Right.
And then maybe the second half of the season is more of like a combined unit. And maybe what ends up happening is all these arcs are connected for some reason, and maybe we don't know that as we're watching, but they'll make sense as we get to the second half of the season. I wanna talk about Ma'afa because I thought this episode, we talk about the fact that Macam is this character that we know as a Martian Manhunter villain, and they've kind of remixed into a obviously a close connection to McGann. I actually thought this episode ended up being very like turning him to that heel point and making him that arch nemesis, the way that he can take that name. I thought this episode cemented that because because of the result. He doesn't kill all the green Martians and red Martians on Mars, but the personal beef that now lies with him and McGann is undeniable. Because at the end of the day, whether Superboy is dead or even if he's alive, he's saved. Either way, the wedding and all that stuff and the life that they had planned, none of that's happening now, and he's directly responsible for it. And I think that he now kind of steps into that role as Ala Fa'ak, and really truly embraces it. And we see why this character becomes an arch villain for Miss Martian.
Yeah.
I'm sure they have plenty of beats with John Jones too, but like I was like this kind of it made the transformation complete for me. It was like, okay, this is the origin of this beef. I know he's done other bad stuff, but in terms of like where this super villain becomes arch nemesis for our protagonist, this is the moment right here. He stops, he gets rid of Connor. Maybe it wasn't by design, but either way, he stops the wedding that was supposed to happen. That was supposed to lead to again McGann's forever happiness.
Yeah, I mean, and it's funny because talk about that scene with them interacting. I mean,
Yeah,
it strikes you as like I think there's a little more disappointment from her than it is, anger or vengefulness.
yeah. She was trying to piece it up
Um,
with him.
yeah,
She was trying to
she's
piece it
trying
up.
to mend fences. Like you said, that time probably has passed, but um, again, in a very slow episode, that scene sort of went over my head. I kind of just took it as regular trash talk. Yeah, he's not extending the hand. She's trying to extend the hand. Typical, villain, hero stuff. But um, then when the thing happens and she's recalling that conversation
Yeah,
again, now she knows. All right, so he's connected to it.
yeah.
But
He's laying these little tea leaves like, oh,
yeah,
say goodbye to your mom and tell dad
yeah,
I'm sorry.
yeah,
Whatever
yeah. Say
like
mom and dad, but
yeah.
but he's still yeah, I mean that when you watch it over, you're like, oh man, yeah, they were telling us right then and there, this is gonna happen now,
Yeah.
and what the plan is. And yeah, I mean, like you said, in terms of becoming that villain that we know in the comics, it's pretty close. Obviously, like you said, it's a different version, but it's equally evil. It's like, again, I talked about Killmonger earlier. I mean, the Eric Stevens that we got in Black Panther isn't necessarily the Eric Killmonger, you know, from the comics, but they may have made improvements to the character
Effective
in some
nonetheless, right?
yeah, effectiveness still the same. So there's still plenty of weight clearly to his Malafat character, and I mean I think we would all be in agreement that this probably won't be the last time we see him. So
No,
uh,
not at all. No, I know we're right now. I mean, we could see him the rest of at some point later in the season, but even if we don't, I think that if we get more seasons of Young Justice, I think he's a pillar. He's again because he's done this kind of unthinkable kind
yeah,
of crime
he's
and
like
this
if you're an OG Teen Titans fan, it's like Blackfire to Starfire.
right.
It's like, man, you just got it's without the royalty angle to it. You just have this evil,
Blood rivalry.
yeah, blood rivalry. And that's again, I mean, Greg Weisman, tip of the hat because you can do this stuff and just the Easter eggs and the names are cool and yeah, I'm a Alpha Hawk, but the character has to then deliver
Right.
and it's gotta deliver. We've seen plenty of cartoons try different things and it sounds cool in theory, but maybe doesn't deliver as well as like it's like Secret Invasion in Avengers Earth Mightiest Heroes. You can do Secret Invasion, that's cool, but it's gotta hit and it's gotta have impact, and it did in that cartoon. And this Miles Vox storyline so far, and this introduction of this villain has had impact.
A couple of final things on this episode. I liked I talked about last week. I thought Prince Jam was very suspect to me. But it was like I said, also typical red herring. Like he actually ends up stepping into a role of a true leader. And I think I like some of the things that they do here where he learns this just kind of unspeakable thing. The woman that he loved killed his father, and you show your best character in these very difficult moments, and it would have been very easy for him to attack her, go crazy, whatever. But he has his empathy and his understanding for what she was going through, and then to have the empathy and understanding that when the rest of the world or the excuse me, the planet learns about the king's death. It was very easy to kind of let that kind of hate fester and realize, well, at the end of the day, it was a Garoon who killed my father. But instead, he uses that moment to do this rousing speech that you kind of see, like, okay, this is a character that you know is of the highest of character, and they'll eventually step in and maybe be the hope that this planet has been looking for in terms of reuniting everyone. So I thought that was a really very powerful moment from him, and I liked just these 3 episodes before and how they kind of set him up to kind of look like a character that maybe we'll learn something about him from beneath the cloak. But he's actually just a really, really person of high character, and I really like that. I don't know any
Uh,
thoughts on Gem real quick.
not necessarily on the prince as much as I do. You're right in what you're saying. But it just leads me to. It's so interesting. You mentioned it earlier about just the idea of the bomb not going off, and like
Yeah,
this Mars or Mars, I should say, is very different
yeah,
than what we've got in the comics. This whole idea of John Jones being the last son of Mars, and being, it's a different, uh, landscape, like you said, with the white Martians enslaving the green Martians, and
yeah.
that's not the case here. And uh, this, there and it's that's a story that's laced in genocide, and this is a much different political landscape. Is in some ways, it's got to be a much different Martian Manhunter as a
Right,
character because
definitely.
you don't have that context. That's what I'm.
Yeah,
We've always assumed from the jump. I mean, Martian Manhunter is Martian Manhunter, and that's what's so interesting about the Young Justice timeline is that, and why I posed, on our podcast at one point, it's like I kind of wish we just got like a Young Justice
just yeah,
universe, where
yeah.
it's like we have cartoons or a Justice League show or a
Right,
Batman show in the Young Justice universe because it's so vast and there's so many things that we still don't know.
right,
We've assumed that Martian Manhunter is just the same Martian Manhunter from the Justice League cartoons and the same guy we've seen in the comics, but yet there's a tweak to his character. It's a pretty major tweak, and yet we don't we find out about this in season 4, and so now I almost have to like go back and look at all the prior Martian Manhunter interactions, and maybe especially there's been plenty of interactions between him and McGann,
definitely.
just going back to their Martian heritage and stuff, and it may not be as tragic as maybe you thought, when you're watching, you're
Right.
like, oh yeah, but
Yeah, I
now,
mean, even the whole idea of McGann being a white Martian, which is such a big angle in season one,
yeah, and I
like
always
that
assumed
was
I was
always just
watching it
loaded
as
with like,
like,
man, like John really took in this young girl
yeah,
who,
and she's supposed to be like a quote unquote villain. I didn't know it was laced in racism. I thought it was laced in, again, like, this was an evil race of Martians, but
yeah,
she just
but
happens to be the good one.
yeah, and it kind of flips it on the head of what is evil, what is opportunism.
Right,
It's very because McGann is obviously not evil.
right,
And then you kind of feel like she wouldn't be evil if there was some kind of if let's
yeah,
say
yeah,
Mouth of Ox plan worked. You don't. She doesn't seem like the kind of person that would be enslaving people.
yeah.
So yeah, it's you're
But that's
right.
the way the
Just
comics have been painted. It's been
right,
the
and they do
idea
it
that all the
and
white Martians are evil and the green Martians, Martian Manhunter has to take out all the white Martians.
right.
But again, like they said, it's just
It's all
skin.
perspective, yeah, and skin pigmentation. It's yeah, the way the Young Justice team has flipped a lot of that on its head. I mean, this is way more compelling than to me what John Jones' normal story is.
Right.
Um, so yeah, this has been really dope, man. I thought this was a good arc. I think this next arc is gonna ratchet up the action, which is why I think you're seeing Lady Shiva, Artemis, and Orphan. I see those three. I'm like, okay, we're gonna get some scrapping. You know what I'm saying? This is it looks like to me a very female led arc. Obviously, those are all three. All the people on the picture, I believe, are female. I don't think there was one male. So that'll be pretty cool to see kind of how that changes things. 'Cause I think if there was anything missing from this arc, I think it would be there wasn't this like a lot of this was a lot of exposition, a lot of talking, a lot of learning of McGann's background and of ours, and all that was important because again we ended up
It
learning
was
a
a
great deal.
conspiracy. There wasn't a
Right,
lot of boxing.
right, exactly. It was a lot of conspiracy, and we learned a lot of about these. We learned a lot about Magan. We learned a lot about Gar. We learned a lot about Martian Manhunter. We learned a lot about Mars and how, again, very different it is from how we probably assumed it would be. So it was very useful. I think that the change of pace with this next arc, if it does become a little more action packed, is definitely warranted and will be welcomed. So I'm excited to get it going, man. But thank you guys so much for checking out this edition of our Young Justice episode recap and review show. This episode 4, Involuntary. If you like this episode and you liked our discussion, leave a like, of course. Leave a comment on what you guys thought about this episode. And of course, be sure to check out all of our videos on New Generation Media. We're doing Young Justice recaps every week, so make sure you keep your eyes and ears peeled for that. Thank you guys for checking us out. For Kendall, I'm EJ. Take it easy, guys. Peace.